Médecins Sans Frontières assists vulnerable populations, and this requires funds for the purchase of equipment and drugs, and the deployment of human resources. Access to these funds must be immediate.
The finance department has several roles, with two very specific ones. The first is to ensure that funds are allocated according to the needs in the field as efficiently as possible.
The second is to navigate through the different constraints imposed by a multitude of banking systems.
When we find ourselves in major emergency situations like earthquakes or tsunamis, local banking systems are frequently impacted too. So we have to be able to identify ways to get funds to the field.
In 2010, MSF France's financial resources amounted to 229 million euros, of which 217 million euros were spent.
2010 saw the highest budget of any year, but also the highest volume of operational activities, mainly due, of course, to the events in Haiti.
Around 82% of the 217 million euros were allocated to field activities, such as the operation set up after the Haitian earthquake.
Transport costs are relatively high in such situations because relief equipment and essential items need to be dispatched urgently. So in 2010, almost 45% of our expenditure was allocated to payroll, 25% to medical services, and another 25% to logistical support and transport.
The remainder is divided between the association's operating costs and fundraising activities. If we look at the 2010 budget, 11 million euros weren't spent, and so were added to our reserves.
Cash reserves are of course deposited in different banks and in different investments, so that they earn interest, but mostly in financial products where we know funds can be released instantly.
One of the reasons for holding reserves is to be able to release funds very quickly. The teams always see a time lag between the onset of an emergency and the influx of donations.
Well, that's understandable. It takes time for the media to react and for us to appeal for funds, so it takes a while to actually receive donations.
There's the time lag, and also how much is donated. We don't always get the amounts we need.
So cash reserves allow us to not only step into action quickly, but also to provide a response based on the actual needs in the field, rather than on the donations we'll be raising for an emergency.
The reserve has a second purpose.
It also enables us to deploy and maintain MSF's programs.
Good examples are programs for people living with HIV/AIDS. Their survival depends on them taking antiretroviral drugs every day of their lives.
Antiretroviral drugs are supposed to be supplied by national governments who receive funding from international organizations like the Global Fund. But in recent years, we've observed a reduction in this international funding. The effects are already apparent and may well get worse as patients find themselves without access to antiretroviral drugs.
In Malawi and Uganda, MSF has already had to take over from institutional donors and finance the purchase of these drugs at a cost of several hundreds of thousands of euros. This is made possible by our reserves and allows MSF to continue its programs. If you would like to look at the association's budget in more detail, you can download the latest financial report.
It's a legal requirement, of course, but it's also a communication tool and a way of showing our accountability to our donors. It provides details on where our funding comes from and how it's allocated, as well as describing the challenges and our different interventions.
And when a specific event calls for the mobilization of the association and its donors, the department provides a more detailed account of its expenditure, as it did after a year of intervention in Haiti.